What was to happen to a rebellious child under the law of Moses? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Deuteronomy on Walking Through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, turn to Deuteronomy 21. We're going to be reading from verses 18 to 23. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. Deuteronomy 21, beginning at verse 18. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they have chastened him, will not heed them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of the city, to the gate of the city. And they shall say to the elders of his city, This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of his city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall put away the evil from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. If a man has committed a sin deserving of death, and he is put to death, and you hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain overnight on the tree, but you shall surely bury him that day, so that you will not defile the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. For he who is hanged is accursed of God. In verses 18 to 21, what is to happen to a rebellious son who will not heed the voice of his father or mother. In the 10 Commandments, the 5th commandment, and the first that came with promise, was children were to honor their father and mother. Part of honoring your father and mother was to listen to their voice. Some people think that this part of honoring father and mother changes when someone becomes an adult, but this passage here in Deuteronomy clearly teaches that it does not, as is evident from the fact that we're clearly talking about adult children, since the charge brought against him was that he was a glutton and a drunkard. This charge would not be made against young children. Now we must note that for sure, when a man marries, he leaves father and mother and is joined to his wife. His relationship with his father and mother changes, but simply becoming an adult does not change this relationship. Sons were to respect their father and mother and obey their voice. It is our Western culture that has given children so many rights and freedoms once children reached adulthood. But such was not the case here, and I suggest shouldn't even be the case among Christians today, for the command to honor father and mother is a New Testament principle as well. What was the punishment for a son that would not heed the chastening of his parents under the law of Moses? Once examined by the elders of the city and found to be guilty, he was to be executed by stoning, so that evil would be put out of the land, and that Israel would hear the result and learn to fear God's commands. To our ears today, this sounds extreme, but in God's eyes it is completely warranted, since it is God, not man, that sets the order of things. For the Christian, God is our Father in heaven. We are his sons and daughters. When we do wrong, he chastens us. If we heed his chastening and repent, all will be well. But if we do not do so, we will be judged for our disobedience, and the ultimate punishment of hell will be meted out if we die in our rebellious state. It's the exact same type of punishment as is presented to us here in Deuteronomy, for honoring father and mother was not a suggestion, it was a command that needed to be followed. In verses 22 and 23, we find a set of verses that are important when we consider the death of Jesus. Here Moses says that if a man has done something that is worthy of death, and the method of death was hanging on a tree, that his body was not to remain on the tree overnight, but to be buried that same day. The term hanging on a tree does not necessarily mean a literal living tree, although it could refer to that, but could also carry with it wood that is set up to look like a tree. Persons executed this way could either be tied to the wood, or even have nails driven through the wrists and the ankles in order to suspend him to the wood. When Jesus died on the cross, sometimes the New Testament writers refer to his death as a hanging on a tree. It is this passage in Deuteronomy that they're trying to get their readers to recall. The fact that the Jews didn't want Jesus' body to remain on the cross until the next day showed the selectiveness that they followed the law of Moses. Deuteronomy said that someone wasn't to be put to death except on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Jesus was put to death on the testimony of 0 witnesses. And yet, even with this being true, the Jews sought it necessary to have Jesus' body removed from the cross and buried so as not to break the law found here in Deuteronomy 21. Such hypocrisy indeed. This chapter ends with a phrase that we'll come back to, the Lord willing, when we get to our study of Galatians. He who is hanged is accursed of God. What this phrase means is that everyone who dies a death through this means of execution has a curse inflicted on him by God, which the transgressor is made to endure. It would normally be criminals, not innocent people, who would die in this way. And so the curse being inflicted by God is not only one of judgment for sin, but one of humiliation and suffering and death. Paul is going to apply this verse to Jesus in Galatians 3:13, and we'll discuss how he does so, the Lord willing, in that study. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Deuteronomy 22, verses 1 to 12, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.